The Immaterial Games Podcast with these guys.
Let's do the clap sync. Come on.
Let's do the clap sync again.
It's just a clap to the right.
And then a snap to the left.
Oh, God. Imagine what the Rocky Horror Picture Show would be like if they actually had to clap sync. Take the shot! That's a goal! Sorry, I forgot. It's a new Premiership season this weekend. Just watched my football team score their fourth goal, which dates this podcast immensely.
It sure does. Not only
But-
is it dated immensely, but you're also the only person here who cares about sports. So now you're like super limiting the rewatchability of that quote.
Yeah. Ah, well. Right, let's just kick straight into this then. This is the Immaterial Gamers Podcast.
Sure is. Ain't no imitators.
No. Ain't no
Immaterial, not
imitators.
imitate. It's immaterial, but there's no imitation.
Yeah.
Why would you imitate something that's immaterial? I mean,
That's just bizarre. Why would you do that? But yeah,
why
we
would
are.
you do that?
We are on episode 54, and it's one of our occasional two-man pods.
Yep,
It's your boy Ryan.
it's your golden boys or your ginger boys, I guess.
Yeah, bronze boys,
Bronze boys, gotcha.
copper boys.
Copper
There you go.
boys.
Yeah, it's a highly discount cider copper boy. So yeah, so it's one of your copper boys. It's Ryan, and then it's your other copper boy. It's Duncan.
From across the pond.
Indeed, and yeah, I mean, what about that week?
What about
The
it?
week-
What do you even want to know? Who's that?
Uh,
I just knocked my microphone off my desk. Hold on, I fixed it. I'm good. Resume.
Yeah, it's such a what a week that microphones get dropped. It was that shocking. I mean, actually, now that I think about it, not much in the games industry happened apart from regulation, discrimination, and bad shit.
Yeah, it was a miserable news week. I
Yeah.
gotta be honest.
Yeah, and we'll get to that miserable news week a little bit later on. I mean, I think at this point it's more of a case we need to do anything at all to make this a happy little podcast before the train takes a turn at Depression Central. So,
It usually doesn't go up from after the games. It usually the news is when it gets brought down.
yeah. I mean, I guess at that point, I mean, it's nice to show some sort of enthusiasm in what we enjoy, and then just watch how every industry in the world tries to take that from you. But I've got to be careful. I don't want to make this a sort of depression and a manifesto. I mean, this sort of comes up before the news later on. Let it be clear. The amount of shit that's going on in the world, don't try and find an entertainment medium, the thing that keeps people happy and, an escape from the crap in the world. Don't try and make that your reason the bad stuff's happening.
It's like the way this podcast is normally formatted. It's like a microcosm of gamer society. It's just like, like we talk about the games that we're playing. We're having fun. Doing our thing. Meanwhile, the whole world is falling apart just outside our window.
Yeah.
And we occasionally
pretty much.
acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But then we're just kind of like, back to our games, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. But it came up as a bit of a joke. One of my old workmates went and posted something on his Facebook last week, as I put up the podcast actually, and it was along the lines of, thank God we don't have video games over here in the UK, otherwise we'd be rife with gun violence. And I kind of had to respond that we're going to need to shut Immaterial Gamers down lest it become a manifesto of hatred.
We're like the British Al-Qaeda.
Well, now we're on the watch list.
Yeah. Well, we were already banned in China. I mean, how much worse can it get?
Yeah, fair. I mean, that being said, all that's left is Russia, and then we've hit the trifecta, haven't we?
I'm way more scared of Russia than I am of anyone from the East.
Yeah. So, yeah, okay then.
See, China will just censor you. Russia will, send people. There will be people at your door. and they'll be like, "You don't talk about Russia anymore."
No, they'll go and find a building in Manchester, or like, I'm in South Manchester, so we could just turn around and just say, "Oh, look, they've come to see Great St Andrew's Church." One of Manchester's most beloved churches. No, next thing I'll know, I'll have some sort of like powder on my door handle, and you'll see me in the news in 2 weeks after.
Oh boy, now we can talk about Ryan in the news.
Eh.
And in our first and only article of news this week, turns out one of our co-creators died.
Yeah.
He touched some powder and then he died.
I know, it's just great, to think that would be the case, and then we'd have to find. I feel sorry for the person who would edit that one. Then
Fucking Russian ricin poisoning.
Yeah, that'd be Martin that'd have to edit it. So anyway, I've got an idea about powder. No.
So speaking of assassinations.
Yeah.
Let's assassinate this intro.
Yeah, let's finish it. So let's move on to what's been played.
What's being played?
So, Duncan.
Yeah,
what have you played?
I was kind of struggling this morning to think about, like, did I play anything in the last week or two that was new? So yeah, that actually did come. One thing did come to mind that was totally worth talking about. So, sometime back in one of the earlier podcasts, I talked about my StarCraft Risk board. Oh
yes, yeah, you board game that you used at a family board game night at one point, right?
Yeah, it's it's an alternative version of Risk that's been flipped on its x-axis. Excuse me, I'm barping into the microphone. And they've got special rules. You've got hero characters that add 1 to your maximum dice roll. You've got objectives that you can use to win the game or give you a boost, some kind of advantage over other players, etc., etc. It's a great board game. I love the new rules for it, and I recently played another variation on Risk.
Ooh.
Ryan, are you a fan of Game of Thrones?
I know of Game of Thrones.
You know of Game of Thrones. You have heard of Game of Thrones?
I have, certainly indeed. And I know there was some warring houses, a giant stabby throne, and dragons.
Yes, that's a good summary of Game of Thrones.
Cool.
So yeah, Game of Thrones has a Risk set.
Ooh, so it'd be set in Westeros?
Actually, that's the cool thing. It's the first Risk set I've ever bought that comes with not 1, but 2 boards.
Oh.
The first board is Westeros, the primary setting of the Game of Thrones books and TV series.
Yeah.
However, there's also a second board featuring Essos, which is the eastern continent.
Ah.
So there's the secondary setting of the show, and the primary region in which Daenerys Targaryen's story unfolds for much of the first 3/4 of the show.
Oh yeah, because she spends a glacially long amount of time getting over to Westeros, right?
Yeah, because beginning of the series, she had to flee with her brother because they were being persecuted, blah blah blah, whatever. Anyway, so she grew up in Essos, and cool things were happening there. And so yeah, basically the Westeros map is a 5-player map. And Essos is the head-to-head 2-player map.
Ah, so it's sort of kind of... There was a point with Risk at one point where they decided that it was a bit unsustainable for people to play a massive game of Risk. So they did have a small 2-person, more objective-based version of the game. Before then, people decided that was too small and they brought back the original one again, but in a more modern military setting.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of different versions of Risk. And so this is the latest and greatest version.
Oh.
So, what's different about Game of Thrones Risk as opposed to any other edition of Risk? Okay, so the StarCraft version of Risk has a set of global objectives
Yes.
They're referred to as achievements that you can unlock throughout the game. Anyone has access to them. Anyone can get them, and by unlocking them, you get some special advantage, one that's unknown to you until you receive it. It's randomly allocated at the beginning of the game. And depending on what game mode you win, you may win the game after a certain number of objectives have been attained, or they might just be permanent buffs for you throughout the game, and then you just have to do regular conquest for the rest of it. Depends on what version you're playing.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones actually introduces a currency system. They have a gold system. Okay. Where there are ports in the game, which essentially act as like portals between any. There are two different colors of ports, and any same color port is connected to every other same color port.
Right.
So you can declare war on. You can declare an invasion on a territory that's like halfway across the map from another port. So it creates a lot of like lateral thinking. Like you're not just thinking about the extremities of your borders as being, places from which you can be attacked. You also have to consider control of the ports as essential. So that part is already pretty cool. But on top of that, the currency system sets it up so that you get gold based on how many troops you get at the beginning of the map, at the beginning of the round. So say you get 6 troops, you get 600 gold. It's all in denominations of 100. And for every port that you have, you also get an additional 100 gold.
Right, okay.
So, with this gold, you have a set of 4... Every player, every army has 4, character cards.
Mm-hmm.
And each character card has an associated cost and an ability that you can use once per turn by paying the gold cost.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so they refresh every turn.
And what are these sort of abilities?
Well, you might, for example, you could pay 300 gold to increase the value of your dice by 1 for the rest of this invasion. This between these two territories, all of your dice rolls are increased by 1.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might say, pay 100 gold or 200 gold and replace one of your attack dice with an 8-sided die instead of a 6-sided die for the duration of this invasion or for this turn or whatever.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that you can get off of character cards. Temporary, useful abilities that can help you claim some territories.
Right.
Another thing you can do, but the other thing you can do with the money is you can also spend it on objective cards. Objective cards are basically how you win in the full version of this game. It has a version of the game that's kind of basically just regular risk with some small variations.
Yeah.
But the full version of the game, you complete objectives, you buy them from a store for 200 gold apiece, and then you try to fulfill those objectives. They'll give you a mission, claim 3 territories in 1 turn from a single enemy, claim 2 ports, own 1 of each kind of port, etc., etc. And they'll all have different amounts of victory points associated with them.
Yeah.
And by getting 10 victory points from any objectives that you buy, you win the game.
Right, okay.
You can also buy what are called Maester cards, which are Maester cards, yes. And they're the same price as objective cards, they're 200 points. You don't get any victory points for them. However, unlike character cards, which are repeatable every turn, Maester cards you can spend an additional gold cost associated with whatever the card that you bought was to do a one-time, one-and-done ability that could affect you for the whole turn, or it could do something else for you. It could put extra units on the board. It could kill units from your opponent's army. There's a lot of things it could do. There's 40 different Maester cards, so a wide variety of different useful utility abilities. I think one of them was brutal. You buy the card for 200 gold, and then you pay an additional 300 gold, so 500 gold in total you pay. But by doing that, at the beginning of your opponent's next turn, they get half the number of armies and gold for their turn.
Ugh.
With an obvious minimum of 3, since that's the basic rules of Risk.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can make them, if they were going to get 7 armies and, 1,000 gold, they now, and it's rounded down as well, so they now get, 3 armies and, 500 gold, or less.
Oof.
Or even, because if it was 300 armies, right, 300 armies plus, say, whatever, X number of ports. I'm trying to imagine how many ports you would need for so if you had 7 armies and 3 ports. Okay, there you go. That's a number. That gives you 1,000 gold. But it's not only does it have your army, so you would only get 600 gold instead of the original 1,000, but then it halves that gold amount. So then you only get 3 armies and 300 gold.
Oh.
So it's a brutal card. It goes from 1,000 gold and 7 armies to 300 gold and 3 armies. Well worth the investment.
Yeah.
Savage card. And they're not all that powerful, but some of them are completely ridiculous.
Are any of them broken ridiculous? That was it. That's just sort of one example of something that just sort of majorly changes how it goes.
Honestly, I haven't seen them all. I've only seen maybe a quarter of them because we've only played one game so far. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that they're not particularly balanced, but at the same time, it kind of makes it more exciting when they're not.
Yeah, so it just adds a twist to the game, especially if someone maybe just running away with it.
Yeah, it was pretty crippling. When I played that card, I had basically just solidified myself as the owner of the eastern half of the board at that point. And just as my mom thought she was going to be able to turn in, some cards and make a comeback, break up my continents and whatever, I play that on her, and she gets 3 armies and 300 gold, and she's like, "Well, I guess that's that then." And concession.
It sounds like some good war-based times.
Yeah, it's definitely... There's a lot more to it than regular Risk, for sure. It's really fun. There's another thing. I also love it when versions of Risk incentivize you to turn in your territory cards for some other benefit other than just saving them for armies.
Yeah.
Because then it gives you a little bit more strategy, because then it's do I use this for armies or do I use this for, its face value? And then in StarCraft Risk, every card had its own ability associated with it, which, the Maester cards essentially take the place of that in this version. But the one thing you can do with territory cards in this version is you can use them to place special units. Each card has a symbol on it. It basically corresponds to the infantry, cavalry, tank picture that they would have in regular Risk.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, it's knight, siege engine, and castle or something.
Yeah.
The knight is a unit that doesn't add 1 to your force. It doesn't count as a unit, but it moves with your army and gives you +1 to your highest die roll wherever that army is fighting. Siege engine replaces 1 of your dice with an 8-sided die.
I don't what now?
An 8-sided die.
That really doesn't sound like Risk at that point.
Yeah, no, it was cool. When we saw that, it was oh my god, that's different.
Yeah.
There's up to 3 8-sided die.
Okay.
And the reinforcement is a exclusively defensive unit. It doesn't move at all. And when someone tries to attack into a fortified territory, I believe it adds 1 to all your dice rolls. Or something similar to that effect.
Okay.
So yeah. All of those special units, whenever a territory is taken over with 1 in it, they all die right away. So if they run out of armies in that area, that unit goes with it. But they stay alive as long as you are able to preserve that, that force, that army. They're effectively the last man out, even though they're not actually a man. So yeah, it's It's really cool. It's a very interesting version of Risk, and I highly encourage any Game of Thrones fans who like board games, or any Risk fans who have even a passing interest in Game of Thrones to try it out. Honestly, I think even people who have never watched Game of Thrones would probably get a kick out of it. It's a very interesting twist on the game.
Yeah, certainly has a different take on Risk. It's something that's ended up in my sort of idea, because just if it was just Risk but in Game of Thrones, it probably wouldn't have got me. But with what you've told me, it's just Risk but different enough to actually think, yes, please. Ooh,
And it's
only,
and it is
£25.
Yeah, and it is cool because, like, the StarCraft Risk board is essentially just the same map, just like, the shape, the territories are shaped slightly differently, and it's been flipped on the x-axis and whatever, but everything is still mostly the same. But the two boards in the Game of Thrones Risk, are unique Game of Thrones themed maps. They're completely different from they're not based on anything in regular Risk. They're their own thing.
Yeah.
So that's also another cool twist, because that's another thing that's pretty stagnant about Risk, is that no matter what version of the game you play, certain territories and certain strategies just work better than others. But on the new maps, you kind of have to make up a new game plan that isn't based on old Risk strategies.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my game for this week. I played one game on the Essos map with my mom, and I definitely want to try the Westeros map and maybe see if we can get other people to play.
Sweet. You know what I'll also do at some point then? See if someone's modded it in Tabletop Sim.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I also got to be careful, because it's like, someone might make a Game of Thrones Risk that isn't necessarily like, the Game of Thrones Risk. So you'd have to, like, go in and look and see, like, okay, is this, like, actually based on the board game version, or is this, like, this person's own mad invention?
Yeah. But I think we can get that verified with you, and we'll see how that works later down the line. Now, for me, mine's not been anywhere near as in depth, because I played the little game with myself called What to Do Now That We've Got an Extra Hour Before the Podcast. So with that, I just quickly looked in my library and went and picked.
Can you buy that on Steam?
You can't buy that in particularly on Steam, but you can choose games on Steam as part of that game. So I played the game called Streets of Rogue.
Streets of Rogue.
Yeah. So it's a shocking roguelike game.
Oh my god.
I know, right? It's not
Going
like it
rogue?
says it in the name or anything. Or going rogue is fun. I mean, it will be probably on the list of going rogue games at some point, since I'm very near the end of the current going rogue journey with Hades. Even when they bloody patched it with another biome, which means that then my objective would technically increase again, but no. Anyway, this roguelike game is effectively a parody of Streets of Rage, the Mega Drive fighting game, which has got a sequel coming out very soon, if it's not already out, where they've changed the art style of it, and it looks cool. So this is the point where Ryan just quickly checks his phone to see if Streets of Rage 4 is out yet.
Streets of Rage.
So yeah, Streets of Rage is So Streets of Rage was the fighting game on the Mega Drive, which involved rookie cops taking on a corrupt regime of gangs in their city that had bought out the police. Streets of Rogue is a underground resistance of people causing havoc in a city because the mayor stole all the beer.
God damn it, Mayor. Prohibition didn't work. When will you learn?
Yeah, so he stole all the beer and made chicken nuggets illegal because he had a tummy ache one time.
Alright, he's gotta die.
Yeah. So, you play as one of various characters in the roguelite tradition. They have their own stats and strengths and weaknesses and starting items and weird little stuff. And you start from the bottom of the city to try and get to the top of it. It's layered. So you got the slums on the floor. It's like Midgar from Final Fantasy. Slums on the bottom, you got the midtown, and then you got the upper town, where the mayor lives. And you go onto each level. You have to complete a set of randomly generated missions on a randomly generated map, and then you go up to the next floor. You have a life bar, where if you run out, you die, and you start back from the beginning again. And you don't keep any items or money that you had in it. What you do get are chicken nuggets. They're the rare item, the upgrade your shit item, the item that allows you to then get further on in the game each time. And it's top down, it's 2D, pixely business, all sprites, and there's not much more to say about it at the moment because it is pretty much as simply if you want a 5-minute game, then you play this. You just
I see.
Some of the objectives will be just like turn off the lights in a house.
Turn off the lights. Turn out the lights.
Yep. Another one will be destroy a generator, or just retrieve this item from this man. Okay, cool. And you get random little objectives and random rewards for doing it.
At what point do you fight Sephiroth?
You don't. Unless I don't think so. But it's very parody. The game is it wears its humour on its sleeve. You got a resistance leader at the beginning of the game. It's like the tutorial's like, oh come on, right, see if you can get through this door and open up this chest. You open up the chest and it's like, oh my god, I've never seen anyone do this before, and then he literally explodes.
Oh. Is there any similarities to Road Trip to Canada?
I don't know. Mainly
because I know that's a game that my stepfather's into that. He likes that. It's basically like a zombie apocalypse. And you got a bunch of people that get together, and they gotta make their way to Canada because they believe it's safe there.
Well, I mean, technically they'd be right.
There's not enough. There's not enough people up here to have like a really effective zombie apocalypse.
No.
I mean, Southern Ontario would be fucked, but other than that, we'd be pretty good. Like if you went to like rural Alberta, you're golden. You'll never see a zombie the whole time you live there.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you what actually, that being said, the funny part of that was reminded me of a Game Theory episode now, which was like, what was it? It was like where to live out the zombie apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
From 7 Days to Die, and I'm sure it said it was somewhere in rural Canada was the place based on all like statistics and shit. Only then at that point, because you found out that was a safe area, that wouldn't then be the safe area because everyone would go there.
Well, everyone who watched that video and also made it far enough into the zombie apocalypse that they could make a decision to travel.
Yeah. So, but, yeah, I don't know. As a 5-minute bit of fun, it was something. As a going rogue, possibly. It's not something that I would keep playing all the time, but it wasted 45 minutes. So,
I really should make a video or two in FTL. Slap that up there.
Well, like I say, Going Rogue's nearly finished if you want to have a go.
It's a game I play. It's a game I'm reasonably good at, I think I could pull together a couple wins.
Yeah. I'm sure you'd easily, 10 attempts to get through 8 sectors. Done. But, yeah. I think that ends then our little trip through what's been played. So, it's now time to go to news time where shit hits the fan and the fan gets covered in shit.
News time.
I feel like, as much as I want to start with like the one positive piece of news, I feel like at least the first two kind of have a certain chronological order to them.
Yeah. Yeah,
like
they
one
do.
Makes
really,
more sense to follow the other.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we do have to start with the top one, don't we?
So this isn't so much a news article per se. This is me watching YouTube videos and then posting stuff I saw.
Yeah,
I often do. Well, occasionally do. I've done it like 4 times, like ever.
Yeah.
So,
this Crash Team Racing thing, isn't it?
Yeah, Crash Team Racing. Remake of a racing game of the same name from I don't know, like the early 2000s or something.
90s,
late 90s. Oh, is it 90s? Wow, okay.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
older than I thought.
Yeah.
I'm too old. Save me. Save me. So anyway, so Crash Team Racing, in the same vein as the Crash Reignited trilogy, sort of a amped up remake of a classic Crash game.
Yep.
British YouTuber by the name of Catechirus. I'm sure many people know who he is.
Mm.
He's a pretty popular guy. Known for he's one of those people who's known to be in the vein of the like hyperbolic negative reviews of older games, and occasionally like nice reviews as well. But that's his bread and butter, is tearing apart terrible old games.
Okay, so very
classic.
Yahtzee light.
Yes, very very much like Yahtzee, except I was only going to say like even faster speech, but pretty close. So he's a big Crash fan. Crash is like the game series that like really got him interested in video games, video game design, and like and just it was a big part of his childhood. So he's been very positive of the newer Crash games, and I can't recall. I don't remember if he got a full sponsorship or if he just got like an advanced copy of the racing game. I know that he had some kind of deal where he got the Crash Team Racing and was like like asked to do a review for them.
Yeah, some sort of promotional
thing. I can't remember the details. All I remember is that he gave an honest, glowing review of Crash Team Racing. He pointed out that there were a couple of small glitches, but overall he enjoyed all the new additions. It's just an overall extremely positive review of the game. And he meant it. It wasn't like he was just like being paid to say nice things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being a big Crash fan, it meant a lot to him that they took the time and care into making a good remake of a good game that he liked many years ago. Then fast forward some months, and it turns out that the Activision,
yeah,
who are the
because
publishers,
it's always fucking Activision,
who are the publishers for the Crash Team Racing remake, decided that they were going to add microtransactions in their little e-store there they had in the Crash Team Racing remake. So the context behind this is that the game launched with a system, some kind of coin-based system, where by playing the game over and over again, completing any race of any kind, you got coins, which were just sort of in-game currency that you could use to buy cosmetics and characters and things like that for different racers.
Yep.
In the game. And you can get more by completing certain challenges and getting trophies and etc., etc. But there was no system at launch that allowed you to buy these coins for currency. You just had to get them through sheer hard work and determination by playing the game over and over again. And if you cared about the game a lot, you could play the game, every day and unlock all your super expensive cosmetics.
Yeah.
And if you didn't care about the game, whatever. It was a system that was not designed for you in the first place, and it wasn't a big deal if you didn't get in on all the, cool glitz and glam fun of it.
Indeed.
And then Activision comes by and says that, that's not a very profitable model. So they enable people to purchase these coins for real money through microtransactions. And this made Mr. Catechirus, who initially praised this system cautiously but optimistically for the fact that it rewards continuous play and continued reinvestment of time and effort into the game.
Yep.
He had nothing but nice things to say about the system, but he also knew it. But he also noted in his original review that it did look an awful lot like a template for an e-store that would normally house microtransactions, and he did note that he was very cautious about what might happen in the future.
Oh, and he was right, wasn't he?
Yeah. The developers of the game actually went out and said that, they did not have plans to have microtransactions for the game when it came out. So this ended up being a publisher decision on Activision's part.
And of course, because Activision are fucking scumbags.
Yeah, and so Catacris went back on the airs and started, and went on a big 18-minute long rant about how he felt, but he felt betrayed in in the sense that, they ended up succumbing to the usual microtransaction pitfalls, and all the kids and such that would play these games, and they see all the cool cosmetics that all their friends and random strangers on the internet are playing with. And it's like, oh, well, that looks like it's going to take a really long time to get. I guess I'll just buy it. I'll make my mom buy it, or I'll take their credit card, or young adults who are impatient and don't have time to invest 40 hours into one game. They'll just dump a lot of money into it. People who have spending habit problems. People who don't do so well mentally at controlling their money.
Yep.
Will be particularly vulnerable to these microtransactions, as they have been in the past.
Indeed. I mean, the big thing that would come up on this, I'll keep mentioning him every now and again, but Jim Sterling, massive thing against microtransaction. It's not because they're there. I mean, they're a problem, that they come up, but it's things like the Lootbox thing, in the sense that it preys on gambling addicts, young children, anyone who publishers think that they can just make a quick buck from.
And it's like, you could say, as a defender of microtransactions, you could be a person who goes and says, well, these people should be aware of their problems, and if they know that's going to be an issue for them, they should just not play these games or just distance themselves from it. But I also think that's a unfair argument, because it's like an entire demographic of potential customers who were never faced with the problem before, in the time, before games were all connected to the internet and microtransactions even existed. An entire demographic of customers has grown up with the video game industry, never having to deal with that problem, and they're now, as young adults who have credit cards and bank accounts and full-time and part-time jobs, they're now being confronted by a problem they never had before, where they are having difficulties controlling their inhibitions, because their brain just don't work quite right. And it's not fair that the gaming industry is preying on that and taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And and another thing, what really drove the point home for me in Catacris's review is that it's not like it's not like some game that he didn't care about. Like you could say Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2 comes out, and it's full of microtransactions. 80% of the game is locked off until you either spend 1,000 hours or $1,000 playing the game. You have a game like that, which I never had anything to do with. I never cared. I'd be like, oh, microtransactions are a piece of shit. But like for him, it was a lot more personal than that, because not only was it a game that he liked in the past, not only is it a game that he genuinely enjoyed playing when it was remade, but it was also a game that he was essentially tricked into giving a glowing, positive review on, only to, I mean, let's face it, the guy's got a lot of subscribers, he has reach, he has an audience, I'm sure there's no doubt in my mind that he probably sold copies of that game with his review. Maybe it was a few hundred, maybe it was a few thousand. There's no real easy way of measuring it, but he sold copies with that review, undoubtedly, with his reach and his influence. And now, potentially, some of those people who bought this game based on his review are now, being, they're being fleeced by Activision when they were never under the impression that that was even a threat.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the bit that sort of pisses me off. Like you say, those two things, because twofold. I never agreed with the argument of oh, well, if they don't like these loot boxes, then they shouldn't play these games. Well, no, here's the problem. They're being fucking inserted into almost every game. So now he's saying that because of that, people shouldn't just play video games. No. Keep
It's like,
your scummy
they're being
out.
interjected into games in which they're completely unnecessary
Yeah.
in the first place. They're being, in this case, they're being retroactively retrofitted into games that did not originally have these problems. So it's like what? You'd have to stop playing games out of fear of the fact that they might eventually include microtransactions later on? That's not fair. I mean, God, what percentage of the world's population, has some kind of mental disorder or illness that, makes it difficult for them to control their spending like that? How many what percentage of the population has some kind of gambling addiction or, money management problems? How many people have to not play video games anymore just because, the system is so prevalent?
Yeah. And that's the worst bit at the end of the day, because they're just looking for the whale, the person who will spend the majority of money, regardless of whether they can, whether they need to, whether they want to. It doesn't matter. As long as they get the money, they couldn't give a flying fuck. And that's the problem. And, and sort of loot boxes got justly panned for. I mean, the concept of the loot box itself couldn't, may not have been that bad, but the way that it was inserted into video game culture and the way that they just needed to shift the goalposts a little bit more and a little bit more, make what was unacceptable just a bit further out of reach, and then the diehards who, to take into account of the stupid president of the United States, a publisher who could just sit there with their diehard fan, shoot someone in the street and just get away with it. It pisses me off. I mean, and it's not like they're, between this and cutting costs of stuff, that it's making, it's making games cheaper, because it's not. They're getting even more expensive, and then they're putting these roadblocks in the way for people. It's a load of shit, really. I'm sure you sort of with me on that opinion. It's
it's. I know the world is a different place. It doesn't work the way it used to in the 90s or the 80s, for that matter. I get that, but it's I don't know. We did fine for a very, very, very long time. Video games did fine for a good solid 2 decades before this was ever really a thing, and it became a juggernaut in the entertainment world. It became, there are companies today that rank among the most financially successful in the world and have been in that position since well before, loot boxes and microtransactions and, vaguely disguised, roulette tables were major parts of the industry. So I don't really know. I when people say that these sorts of things are necessary to keep the gaming industry alive, I don't believe you. I don't believe that what you're saying is a true statement.
No,
because I know it's not true. I've seen it. Okay, I'm a young guy. I missed a lot of the early gaming history, but I'm aware of it, and I did catch the little, the tail end of it. I saw it. I saw the game industry doing just fine for many years.
Yeah. There was, for absolutely ages. It was like the fact of, oh, look, these additional skins and costumes you can get in games. You know what they used to be back in the 90s? Cheat codes.
Yeah, that's actually, I can't remember if it was in that video or not. I think, but that was a thing that was pointed out either by comments or posts or possibly in the video. I don't really remember, but I remember someone saying it used to be if I wanted weird cosmetics or to make my character look strange or to unlock a special secret character, you'd either just play the game or you'd punch in a cheat code. Now, instead of punching in a cheat code, you punch in your credit card number.
Yeah. So, that's the really annoying, depressing thing of it. So, related to that, we'll just move these, because we'll just sort of move this forward. I mean, a couple of the news stories that have come up next sort of link into this, the video itself. I'll put the YouTube link of the video in the description for the podcast as well, so you can have a watch of it. I mean, to be honest, it'd be more likely the other way around. But anyway, based on that, the ESA, fresh from their "we can't hear you" of giving away a whole bunch of people's information, have managed to get an agreement with the big console producers that state that lootbox odds must be disclosed in their games. So,
so if we're, I guess we can call this a minor upswing in the mood in between our death march of news for this afternoon.
Yeah. So it's quoted here in this GameIndustry.biz article that ESA Chief Counsel of Tech Policy, my God, what a title, Mr. Michael Warnecki, or just Warneck, announced, that these are going to be happening. And in addition, as an update, by 2020, the following list of publishers will also pledge to disclose odds, including Activision Blizzard, Bandai Namco Entertainment, Bethesda, Bungie, Electronic Arts, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony Interactive Entertainment, Take-Two Interactive, Ubisoft, Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment, and Wizards of the Coast. So, all publishers that use loot boxes, pretty much, in AAA gaming. What's the catch? By 2020, I mean, they'll find their way to just shove microtransactions in somewhere else at that point. They'll just make loot box disclosure not necessary, but,
Notably absent from this list, I mean, lots of people, but notably Epic Games and Riot Games not on the list.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Here we go. Some other ones. This was before the August the 8th update. Notable publishers include 505 Games, Capcom, CI Games, Deep Silver, Disney, Epic, Focus, Gearbox, Gung Ho Intellivision Entertainment, Calypso, Konami, Magic Leap, NCSoft, Natsumi, Nexon, Rebellion, Riot, Sega, Square, as you said, THQ Nordic, Tencent, and Marvelous. So, the other big ones. But, Epic could turn around and say that they donate 90% of their money to charity. They still wouldn't get the games industry to like them at the moment. So, yeah. And then an even further update on that Psyonix said that they're just going to get rid of them. The guys behind Rocket League.
Well, that's something.
So, that is purely, I reckon, is funnily enough, is probably based on what Jim Sterling said in one of his videos, which is he gave Rocket League a Game of the Year award, and he doesn't give games a Game of the Year award if they're fee to pay. So if you've got to pay for the game and then pay for microtransactions, doesn't give an award. Psyonix got the award for Rocket League, then brought out the loot boxes, so he felt he had to scrub that from the record. A week later, they said they're getting rid of them. I feel their reputation is required. But, so that's some loot box information. And then, speaking of weird shit, this came up from Eurogamer. How bad is your reputation with a country that you send death threats? Because this is what happened to a man who isn't named, but he threatened to do a repeat of Kyoto Animation. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what happened there, someone sent death threats towards a animation studio in Japan, then set fire to said animation studio, killing a bunch of people in there. 35 people to be exact. Absolute dickhead. Simple.
Yeah. Okay.
Situation on that. But he sent this death threat over email to Square Enix, saying, "Give me back my money from your shit game. Do you want a repeat of Kyoto Animation?" He promptly got arrested and was told police, quote, "I was pissed off at losing in a game, so I sent the mail." Now, there's a few Final Fantasy mobile Square Enix games probably where you could lose like that. If I was to guess anything, maybe Brave Exodus. But, that's not the first time that it's happened as well, because according to the same Eurogamer article, a 25-year-old nursing care worker threatened staff after failing to get an item in a gacha game despite spending over £1,500.
I wish they had disclosed how much money the this jackass had spent on the game. I would like to know like how much money he thinks is worth. You know, like how much money can this guy lose in a game before it's worth it for him to go burn a building down with actual human beings inside of it.
Yeah. I mean, he probably wouldn't have done it if he had loot box odds.
But it's also, it's like, also, I mean, not that this is exactly the world's best time to play devil's advocate. I genuinely, this is obviously a very terrible person who's had an abundantly negative reaction to this game. On the same hand, we can't say something like that and then just pretend that we didn't spend the last 20 minutes talking about people with gambling addictions and people with mental health problems playing these games. And, this is what these systems do to people, man. Gambling itself is a problem. I mean, if this guy wasn't spending his money on video games, he'd be at a casino somewhere probably. So it's not even like, but it's when you can download it onto your television and play it from home, not even have to get up. It's easier than ever.
Yeah.
I'm personally, it's like I got nothing against gambling as a concept. I think it's fine as long as it is heavily regulated, and I've been kept, in a very separate, very segregated part of the world. It needs to be like a process to go to a place or to interact with a thing which allows you to gamble, in my opinion. Because it needs to be a very conscious decision, a very conscious act for a person to go out of their way to go and gamble because of the risks it creates for susceptible individuals. Which is why it's so dangerous to have these, sort of pseudo gambling systems in our gaming, our gaming industry.
Yeah, where stuff like this is just bought as a shop item as opposed to,
it's like it's casinos it's a casino that you can download onto your PS4 or your PC or your Xbox, and you don't even win money for it. You just win pixelated digital avatar that will disappear in a year when the game goes out of business.
Yeah.
So yeah, that guy's a dick, but so are the people who make loot box systems and gadget systems. So what do you want? What do you want? What can you say?
Yeah, no, it's true. Maybe it's just better if they do just fully regulate loot boxes. You know what? Fuck it. We obviously can't be trusted as a species now in terms of that. So, you know what? Fuck it. What we can be trusted to do is make decisions and learn, Well, I kind of brought it up at the beginning of the podcast. I'm going to sort of bring it up very briefly at the end. Just censoring shit that you think is the problem instead of dealing with the actual problem is fucking stupid. This comes off the news that was based everywhere that Walmart stores were pulling down and unplugging advertisements for what they perceived as violent video games in wake of the mass shootings that occurred, it'll be 2 weekends ago now, because that solves the problem.
Yes. Okay, here's the thing about that. Before I was kind of like, I wasn't really taking the guy's side. I was just like, okay, let's just, I just wanted to bring all the points to the table. This one I am going to play somewhat of a devil's advocate on, because while I don't think that, their solution, quote unquote, is going to fix any problems, I also think that I don't think this has anything to do with necessarily, solving the problem of violent video games and violent imagery creating, violent criminals in our society. I don't think that really is what this is about. I think this is more just a sensitivity issue. I think it's like when people are hit with tragedy, when a region is hit by a major tragedy like this, a violent act is committed against one or a number of individuals, and it seems unprovoked. It seems totally, it seems completely out of left field. It shocks people and it upsets them, and the last thing they want to see the next time they go out to the store to buy their groceries is things that remind them of this tragic event that has brought their community to heal.
Mm.
So and Walmart did specifically say that like this isn't it's not about it's not like this is like their step one in removing violent games from society. They just said it's like this is a temporary thing. This is just a temporary measure. It's like we're gonna take things down and let the emotions settle, let people heal from this tragic event, and and then we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get that, and I guess actually when you think about it, the shooting happened in a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, didn't it? The first
right
of
right.
the two.
That is also important context.
Yeah.
And now, it's go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. No, continue. Sorry, I was just.
I've got a whole other. I've got like the rest of this my contingency to go on. So I mean, if you've got any more points or anything.
No, I think yeah, no, because like I say, I think my main sort of issue on this is it's a repeat of what happened in the late 90s with Night Trap, the game that was out for the Sega CD, where there was this threat that was like sexual violence going on in the game, and therefore everything needs to be monitored. And that's what brought the age rating system into effect. Between that and Mortal Kombat, that sort of brought the age rating system in, and then there was this fear, and it always seems to happen in sort of the populated countries, that there is this sort of constant battle for correlation on whether watching something or doing something will inherently make you think that you could go out and recreate what you've learned.
And that might be true for like a very small mentally unhealthy percentage of the population, but the overwhelming majority of people understand the barriers between fiction and reality.
Yeah.
And it's just not even relevant to consider the correlation. And it's like I actually just to go off on a bit of a tangent here, I don't know if you've ever watched the show First We Feast.
I haven't, but I know of it.
Yeah, so First We Feast, I should say it's a channel, not a show, but the First We Feast channel has a show called Hot Ones, which is essentially just a show where a guy, I can't remember his name, does interviews with various celebrities, internet celebrities, real celebrities, actors, musicians, what have you. Anyone who's relevant at the time. It's a massively popular show. It's like 10 million subscribers, like millions and millions of views. One of my personal favorite guests on that show was Alton Brown, who's an American cooking show icon over here. I'm sure he's well known in many places, but in particular he's well known in the States for I believe it was Good Eats and like food scientist or something like that. But
so he's American version of who we would have over here. We've got a cook called Heston Blumenthal, who's a sort of food scientist. Mixes two odd flavors together to get something that is actually considered quite tasty because of how they realize how the taste buds operate.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy who became very popular amongst like the common people, so to speak. Like as opposed to shows that like Iron Chef or something that which like back in its prime was like very much appealed to like people who are like really into like the high art of cuisine.
Yeah, high dining sort of thing. Yeah.
Alton Brown was very much appealed to sort of the layman in the cooking, the layman of the cooking world, in the sense that he could take like a very complicated idea of like why food tastes like this. Why do these molecules interact in these ways to make your food, your palate go ooh? And he could take it and make it into very relatable and understandable terms, and he could, make very simple adjustments and suggestions and very simple tips and tricks for cooking that anyone could do and make it taste like it was prepared by, a Michelin star chef.
Yeah.
He made food fun and interesting and all that. He was, he's also known for somewhat of an eccentric personality. Like he's very much like not like a Guy Fieri kind of hyperbolic personality, but like just sort of like a bit of an oddball. He's got a funny hairstyle and he talks in a quick and quirky way. So people liked him for his personality and for the way he treated food. And he was on that show, and one of the questions that he was asked was, I'll get around to it. I know I've been going on a bit of a long tangent, but I'm bringing it. I'm bringing it around. I'm completing my orbit here.
Okay.
One of the questions he was asked was like, what were the watershed moments of the cooking industry and like the Food Network as a whole? Like, were there any like major events or shows that came out that made Food Network as big as it was? And he very plainly just said like 9/11. 9/11 is what made the industry what it is today. And he sort of related it to how there was this great big tragic event, 4,000 dead, and it was an attack on an American soil, the first one since Pearl Harbor, and it was this event that brought everyone down, and all of a sudden everyone was like afraid and scared and sad, and all they wanted was comfort. All they wanted was something non-violent, something gentle, something comfortable. And so the Food Network, which at the time had been a very specialty niche network, suddenly exploded in viewership because no one wanted to watch the news, no one wanted to watch sitcoms or dramas or anything. They just wanted to watch cooks prepare food and make and smile and they just wanted to be comforted. And so like I think that kind of sentiment is a big part of where Walmart is coming from. I don't believe it's necessarily coming from a place of censorship or paranoia. I think it's just about trying to console a wounded community. Try and get their mind off of the tragedy for a few weeks or a few months or what have you.
Yeah.
So that's where that's coming from, I think. What's also in the article, and what I think is closer to what you were originally afraid of and originally leaning towards, is everyone's favorite president ranting on about how violent video games cause violent criminals, and we need to heavily regulate this industry. And it's like, I feel like Walmart's solution is a temporary fix done out of sensitivity, whereas Trump is talking about turning it, creating permanent legislature that would heavily regulate the video game industry. And that's the kind of thing that I don't agree with, because I would have thought that Mr. Donald Trump, ever the economist, ever the capitalist, ever the Republican, would understand the value in letting the market sort of regulate itself, and leave it up to the parents and the individuals to decide what sort of things are okay for them and their children, and decide for themselves what their limitations are and what they should and should not be exposed to.
Yeah, and certainly not tell them what their limitations are and what they think they should and shouldn't be exposed to. That's the sort of his issue. I mean, now that you've mentioned it about the Walmart, I can see where they're coming on in regards to it. But for I feel for sort of Donald Trump and that's just another sign of a bit of control, to be honest. But that's not.
It's like I just I think my concern isn't what Walmart is doing. My concern is opportunists who are prone to scapegoating, like the current president in the United States. I'm concerned that they will use a combination of this event plus Walmart's reaction from it, or any other company's reaction to it, for that matter. Whoever else may voluntarily join up with them. Nothing has been said yet, but you never know.
Yeah, we should
I'm
actually-
afraid of them using that as a jumping off platform for making their campaign and making their point.
Yeah, we should also say at that point that Respawn and EA were supposed to be doing a Apex Legends tournament recently as well, and that's been postponed in wake of the shootings. And a bit closer to home on that, or a bit closer to the time, there was supposed to be a Blumhouse horror-ish film due out very soon called The Hunt, which was a film starring Hilary Swank as a bunch of people who get kidnapped by some elitist people to hunt purely for sport purposes. And that's also been postponed indefinitely now due to the mass shootings as well. So there's a lot of media that's doing their part, shall we say, in terms of not glorifying gun violence, but
not inflaming the issue. That's what I mean. This is the difference between sensitivity and censorship.
Yeah,
I mean, what these people are doing is sensitivity. What the politicians are proposing, that's censorship, and it's important to understand the distinction.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because it's not like they've been taken down because of a government thing. They volunteered to do it. Let's just put it at that. But I mean, at the end of the day, until people actually realistically talk about the gun control problem, that's all it's going to be, is people volunteering to drop stuff to give people that little bit of time before things get back to normal and it happens again. The cycle needs to stop, but until the right target is looked at, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, you mentioned gun control. I mean, I'm not even going to go. I'm not even going to start on that. I actually have something I want to talk to you about after the podcast that is related to that you might get a kick out of.
Yeah.
Well, not like a good kick, a bad kick, but a kick.
But, yeah, some sort of interest out of. But yeah, I guess that'll be the right jumping off point to wrap this podcast up then. So
yeah, my throat's starting to hurt after all that talking, so I'm good.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, we'll get on to that. So just to give people the reminder, since we've been getting some new subscribers recently, if you are one of those new subscribers and you're listening, hello, welcome. Thank you for
Sorry for this. Sorry for the downer of a podcast.
Yeah, we're not usually like this. There's a lot of happy, fun stuff, but sometimes we can get into some actual discussion as well. But yeah, so you're on here. You've checked out based on the channel trailer. You want to know when the schedule is. Okay, here's the schedule. Tuesdays, the podcast. You're listening to it. Every other Wednesday when it's back from hiatus, Shattered Reflections. Thursdays, Teamfight Thursdays, for all your LOL and Teamfight tactics love, and maybe even Dota Underworlds and Auto Chess if we ever get round to it. Fridays, General's War Table. Steve is either very close or finished XCOM 2. I'll have to be honest, I didn't get to the end. I left it as a cliffhanger from myself. I just put the stuff up and put it on the social media. Saturdays, play sessions, for when we all want to get together and play some games. Simple as. Sundays, sibling rivalry, for when Duncan and his sister Andrea want to play some games and not necessarily work together. And Mondays is going rogue, for when we want to challenge each other.
Yeah, and there may be some more projects coming down the pipeline, specifically on mine and my sister's end there. Not necessarily related to sibling rivalry. It might end up being a new thing. We're not really sure what's going on there. We're looking into making some recordings.
Yeah, and potential streaming.
Games. Yeah, streaming as well. Yeah, I've been thinking about. I'm wanting to do Twitch streams for a while now. But just lacking a second monitor and a decent setup, it's just never been really viable. But now that I've got a second monitor, and a fairly decent setup, some good equipment, I can maybe consider revisiting that idea.
Yeah.
Me and my sister are planning on doing some recordings on console games, particularly games on the Switch, but maybe the PS4 as well.
Aye.
So we're very excited about that. We'll have more information on that later, probably by the next podcast.
Coolios. That'll be something. And I guess in the meantime, then, just in case, I'll have to just dust off the details for the Immaterial Gamers Twitch channel as well, because, there's one there. I was going to consider doing streaming at some point, and then priorities changed. But, yeah, so that's your schedule for the week. And, hopefully what we'll do next week, we'll hopefully, if the news is good, we can do a happier podcast.
Yeah, hopefully. It hurts my throat to be talking about the sad news, because sad news usually requires a lot more discussion than the happy news.
Yeah, definitely. But, hopefully we'll be able to save our throats and everything will be good. So, thank you for listening. Duncan, thank you for joining.
Always a pleasure.
And until next time, people, for God's sake, actually, this is
more
real.
than ever. Gotta emphasize this one today.
Yeah, do not kill each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, have a good week. Have an uneventful week. And we'll see you then.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.